Well, hey, you guys, I have with me Jill and Jason Craven, and these guys are rock stars. I just have to tell a quick story about Jill. I've You guys have worked with Zizor for a bunch of years, but we put on the Data Driven Salon Summit, and the very first one that we put on was 4 years ago. And Jill came to it, right? And I think your total sales as a stylist, because you work behind the chair, but your total sales that year were roughly $250,000 a year, which pretty much is an elite status, right? But that year you met another Zizor customer who she was on stage, and she got up there and she was talking about doing 500,000 a year, and you. That following year, I ran into you at a conference and you said, I got to tell you something. And I'm like, what, Jill? And you're like, I saw Denise. I knew that $500,000 a year was possible, and I'm going to do it. And you did it that year. So you kicked butt, you made that $500,000 in a year in revenue. And then you told me, I'm going to even beat that next year. My goal for the next year is $600,000. And I was so proud because that was 2019. You actually did $630,000. So, and I think you were number 2 in the entire Zizor network. So you actually beat that person. So anyway, I'm so proud. You guys run a great business, and during COVID and the preparation, you guys have seen everything out there about what to do and how to do it. Can you give me just did it go according to plan? And what are some of the things that you did do? Because learning about it is one thing, but living it is a whole different thing. So what are some of the things that you did? And I think, Jason, there were 3 categories that you were looking at. So what are some of the things that you were doing or you did?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. And yeah, thanks for having us again. Yeah, gosh, before I kind of walk you through what we did, I would say that we had the same concerns, same level of anxiety that everyone has. But we knew at some point, we were going to have to make the decision to open. One of the things we started doing early on was obviously planning for our reopening. But if we had to bullet point these things into three areas, I would say first and foremost is start getting your supplies together. Get clear on what those are and go ahead and start getting those things together now. The second thing is get a good understanding of what your state and local regulations are going to be. So get very clear on what those look like, from the signage to the expectations for your guests, for your staff. Understand what you need to do. And then the last thing is going to be really making sure you have the staffing in place. It's one thing to have your maybe your stylist team perhaps ready to go, but you really need the support of those other key team members to make it happen. So, staffing is critical. If you have those 3 things in place, then you're going to be much better prepared, when that day comes.
So when you talk about the materials, the stuff that you're talking about disposable gowns or washable gowns or capes, right? Because you have one, you have to change that after every client, right? You're talking about the masks. Right? That kind of stuff.
The mask for your team, for your guests, things like obviously your capes and hand sanitizers or some sort of sanitation wipes. Those things you're going to need now, and get as much of that as you can. If you don't need it during this pandemic, you're going to need it anyway. So go ahead and get as much as you can, because odds are you're going to need it, for, in the coming weeks, and then potentially even some of these supplies throughout the year. So, start getting those things together now if you haven't already.
What's the biggest challenge that you're dealing with? Because you prepared, but then there's some oh craps.
Yeah. Oh yes. And we step in them too, and it's I would say probably the one thing that's been challenging for us, obviously, is our scheduling and appointment books. For us, when we closed back in March, we actually closed on March the 18th. We never expected it to last this long. So initially what we were hoping at best would be a couple weeks. As we look to move those guests forward a couple weeks, we found ourselves very quickly moving them again. So I would say get clear on what your expectation is for when you reopen. Find out what available staffing you have so that you know how to handle your guests. Look at your appointment books, figure out what that might look like in terms of how many people you can have in your salon at a time. But just get clear on what that scheduling looks like for your team, but also for your guests.
But isn't that, you were talking a little bit earlier about some of that comes in and they have multiple services, then they have to come back, and that's been a little bit of a surprise. Is that right, Jill? Do you
mean like as far as multiple services when they come in?
Yeah, and scheduling, rebooking those, and shifting them around, and that's.
Oh yes, that's been, and especially me being behind the chair. So talking with my own guests, I have so many. So right now I'm having to work 6 days a week so I can have one guest at a time through the whole service, because it takes longer. And so.
Wait, so why does it take longer? Is it because you can't, like, I know, just for the people listening, I think you probably shuffle like 10 guests at once, right? While one's processing. I mean,
right.
I'm joking.
Not 10, but yes. So yes. So while they're processing, say if it's just an overall color, it takes me about 10 minutes to apply it. And then they have to process 35 minutes, and then they get shampooed and followed with a treatment usually. So that whole process takes almost an hour, and then having to come back to my chair for their haircut service, finishing. So in between that time of the service, I'm kind of in limbo, which I'm not used to. It does give you more opportunity to do more service on them, talk to them more about their retail and things like that. But it's been an adjustment for me for sure.
Because normally while they're processing, you're doing another client. And
correct. I'll take another guest. Yes.
You have assistants working.
And I have assistants working with me. So they'll take them to the shampoo area and do, whatever services there that they have done.
What impact on the business is it going to be? Because it's obviously you're not going to hit your 630 this year.
I know. No, I had like a way higher goal than that this year. And I was doing good.
We're only down 1 month. We have plenty of time left.
I know, you never know what happens, but
I love that, man. I love that.
It was not over.
Yeah. Honestly, as far as revenue is concerned, thankfully we're in a good position, and so we're not too concerned about that right now. We're focusing more on the personal side of it and making sure everybody's really comfortable. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of it, I know that there's a big revenue side, that part, but a lot of it is an emotional, and personal side. And that was like one of our biggest deciding factors of us opening when we did, because I know there's a lot of salons that aren't comfortable opening yet, or they have staff that's not comfortable opening yet. We did a lot of Zoom calls, talked to our staff, felt them out really well about what's happening, and tried to make them feel more comfortable. I talked to a lot of them personally in the evenings on phone calls and such. And honestly, emotionally, it was getting to the point of they needed to get back here. It was, there's a lot of things that can happen, a lot of habits, things. And it's just like they needed, hairdressers are very creative people. And when we don't have structure, sometimes we can fall into holes, and it's hard to stay out of that. And I know that because I'm that person. So that was a big factor when me and Jason were talking about reopening. We were concerned about the staff's well-being mentally, emotionally. So.
Yeah. All right. So one thing that you could tell, hopefully, what should the rest of the world know who are not opening or have not opened yet?
Right.
You could tell them one thing. What would it be?
I would just say, start planning now, but, the guests that come and see you want to see you, they're dying for you to come back. So, it's sure there's a little anxiety, I think, when you first opened. That's normal. We were a little, nervous and had all the same concerns, I think, that everybody else has, but I would say, plan, prepare, and then, those people that want to come in and see you, those are going to be your best customers. They're going to love to see you. I guarantee you.
Oh, they appreciate it. I would say finish your first day, because after that first day, you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I mean, do I love wearing a mask? No, not really. I feel like I'm suffocating.
Right.
But the outcome of it, the guests that are so happy and that they're just relieved to being back, it's worth it. And after you get through that first day, you're like, we can do this, so that's what I would say my biggest advice would be is get
Wow,
through the
that's
first
really
day.
good advice. That's a good. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you so much. Last question, Jill, what's your retail per client?
Piece or dollar?
Retail dollars per client. Retail per client ticket. What's yours?
Uh,
I know what it is.
You do? You tell it then. I haven't looked lately.
We haven't. I know.
What is it, Chris?
We haven't.
I was just looking. I think it's like $35,
Okay.
which is dang good.
That needs to be better. That's not
Yeah.
enough.
All right, love you guys.
I love you back.
And thank you, Chris.